Hey there folks, Luke here with the Outdoor Grip Review. I hope you're all doing well. Today for this episode, I have a cup of coffee in my hand and we are going to go over a guide for tent buying. Now when you go out to buy a tent, there's many aspects that you need to consider, so grab yourself a cup of coffee as well. Let's get started. Now every single week I receive emails about tents. Which one should I buy? Which one's the best? And really, I can't answer that question for everybody individually without a lot of information. So I wanted to take about 10 minutes, make this video for you, and present you with different aspects that you need to consider when it comes time to purchase a tent. Now, very rarely will there be a one tent fits all solution. And that's what I'm going to go over here. Now, if you're the type of person that likes to go camping in the same spot, at the same time of year, every single year, you could probably get away with using one tent. Now, if you're like myself and you like to explore, you like to go different places, a one tent solution isn't feasible, it's not going to work. And I'm going to present you now with an example of that. As you may know, there is a big difference between a 3-season tent and a 4-season tent. 3-season tents are good for late spring, summer, early fall. And of course that depends on where you live, of course, and the environment, the climate, and so on. A 4-season tent is made namely for those colder, more extreme weather months. They're heavier, they're beefier, they're made to take more abuse and intensity from the weather, including stronger winds, heavier snow. Basically, a 3-season tent cannot handle those type of conditions. So there's a huge difference between that 3-season tent and that 4-season tent. During the warmer months, you wouldn't want to use a 4-season tent. You wouldn't want to carry that extra weight that comes along with it. Also, 4-season tents typically are warmer than 3-season tents. 3-season tents are typically cooler and provide better airflow. You need to consider for yourself the environment that you're going to be using your tent in, the climate, the sort of weather that you're going to be facing. Will a one tent solution work for you? I don't know. Only you can answer that. Will it work for me? Absolutely not. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump into this guide. The first aspect that we will touch upon is weight. Weight is incredibly important. Now, if you're a car camper and you're driving someplace and you're not carrying your tent, it really doesn't matter. You can have a 10-pound tent if you want to, or 20-pound tent. It doesn't matter at all. If you're going to be hiking the AT or something along those lines, every single ounce counts, because there's a huge difference between 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, especially when you're going a far distance. Ultimately, weight translates to comfort. The lighter the weight of the pack in general, and that includes your tent, the more comfortable, the more fun you're going to have on your adventure, the further you will go. And that's why weight is very, very important to consider. Now, typically, your lighter weight tents, the lighter weight you get, the less durable the materials are. So that is something else that you need to consider, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, of course, we have to talk about cost, and this is one that is always controversial with the viewers. Some people get it, some people don't. Every once in a while, I will show off a tent. I'll be like, okay, this is a 4-season tent, and this runs $500. And there will be a few people who are just like, oh my gosh, that's idiotic to pay that much money. Well, those people do not understand the difference between a 3-season tent and a 4-season tent. They don't understand the reason why a tent would cost that much money. Now, when it comes to cost, you have to pick a range that makes sense for you. If you're the type of person that goes out once a year and it's just going to be for a couple miles, then you're going to set up your camp. You don't need to spend a ton of money. Now, if you're somebody like me who's very serious about backpacking, it's a major part of my life. I have no issues with spending higher money on a better piece of kit because I will continue to use it year after year. I'm going to use it frequently. Typically, when you spend a higher amount, you're going to get a better product. It's going to be lighter weight, it's going to be better materials, more durable, and so on. So really, you have to consider what is the right range for you. I always suggest to my viewers that you get the best quality, best bang for the buck when you go out to buy gear, because each piece, each component is incredibly important. And that brings us to protection, and this is a very important aspect to any tent that you need to consider. A tent that doesn't protect you is absolutely worthless. It's also dangerous. Most people die from hypothermia in the warmer months. You would think that it'd be in the the coldest part of the winter, and that's not the case. All you have to do is let your body temperature drop, And one way to do that is by getting soaking wet inside of your tent. You need a tent that is strong enough, that can offer enough protection from the elements to get you through your night, through your trip, so that you can enjoy yourself and have a great time. I've been out many times and have tents fail during strong storms, and I'll tell you what, it's not a lot of fun. What you have to do to stay warm is not always a lot of fun. If you're out with somebody else, sometimes you have to hop inside of their tent and snuggle, and let me tell you, it sucks when it has to be like another guy. You know, I've been in those situations. I've had other people have to sleep inside of my tent after they've gotten soaking wet, and it's not especially fun for me to be cuddling up with some guy, some dude. So you can see what I'm saying here. So again, this is an aspect that you really, really need to focus on. You need to find a tent that offers you good protection and good durability. There's a lot of really cheap tents out there that will not handle thunderstorms and stuff like this very well. So again, research, research, research. If you're thinking about buying a tent, you need to research it. Make sure that that tent can stand up to your average thunderstorm. It doesn't have to be a hurricane or anything like that, but it has to be able to offer you protection. The next aspect that you need to consider when purchasing a tent is this. Is it going to be a freestanding tent or a non-freestanding tent? A freestanding tent means that you can basically set that tent up anywhere. All you have to do is throw in the poles, do whatever you got to do, and set it up. You don't have to stake it out. A non-freestanding tent means that it has to be staked out, it has to be hunkered down. You're not going to be able to just pick it up and move it because it's going to be connected directly to the ground. And, of course, it really depends on where you are going as to what tent you need. Freestanding tents typically are quicker to set up than non-freestanding tents. Non-freestanding tents typically are lighter weight than freestanding tents because you don't necessarily have to have an elaborate pole system. You can use trekking poles, a couple of tent stakes, and you're set. In my opinion, one is not better than the other. It really just depends on your needs, where you're going. Next up, we need to talk about capacity. How big of a tent do you need? Now, for myself, I like two-person tents because I could really sprawl out. It gives me a lot of space. I can also fit my gear inside of the tent. I do like one-person tents, and if I'm going to go for a very, very long trip, I want to go lighter weight, so I don't mind that smaller size. But if it's going to be, 20 miles or less, I don't mind carrying that additional weight, so I can have more space, I can be more comfortable. Sometimes with a single-person tent, you're going to be limited on space and how much you can actually put inside of that tent. So, with some shelters, single person, you can lay in it and that's it. Your gear will have to go on the outside. So it's just something to consider. A two-person tent can still be very, very lightweight, and for one person, it can be an absolute palace. So again, consider what you need. What are you going to be doing with it? And search accordingly. In the beginning of the video, we discussed 3-season versus 4-season tents, and we'll touch upon that one more time. You need to pick a tent that really is suitable for the conditions that you're going to be going out in. The most popular selling tents are 3-season tents, and they're good for, spring, summer, and fall. And of course, it really depends on what part of the country, what part of the world that you're in. It depends on the weather during those times. But in most cases, a 3-season tent is suitable for those 3 seasons. Typical 3-season tents are more airy. They have better airflow, less condensation, and so on. The 4-season tent will typically be a little bit more shut in, and it will allow for greater warmth to be kept inside of your shelter, which you will want during the coldest months, but you will not want that contained heat during the warmer months. So that is definitely something to consider. Since we've discussed 3-season versus 4-season, let's go ahead and discuss design elements. Now, we're talking about ventilation, we're talking about how the poles are inserted through sleeves, or how the netting is hooked onto the poles, and so on. There are so many different designs when it comes to tents that it can be overwhelming. So again, you need to consider what you like, what you are looking for, and what is going to be suitable for your needs. Now, if you're going to be camping, let's say in the fall, and you have poles that are on the outside of your tent, and it does a little bit of raining that night, and the temperatures drop before you wake up, and your poles are all frozen together. Man, for you, that is a poor design element. That is just something that you need to consider. In the summer, that won't be a big deal, will it? Having wet poles. But again, this is what I'm talking about. You need to consider those design elements. Along with this, we're talking about doorways. We're talking about vestibules. We're talking about space. All these elements that you need to consider when it comes time to purchasing your tent. if you're going to have somebody else camping with you, staying inside of your shelter, you may want double doors, right? That way you're not stepping over each other in the middle of the night when you have to go use the bathroom or something like that. Also, you need to consider the design elements in regards to space. If you're sharing a tent with someone, are you going to be able to fit your gear inside of that tent? Is that a priority to you? Again, we go to the vestibule. That's where you're going to keep your gear. So you need to make sure that you have a vestibule that's big enough to keep your gear if you're going to be sharing your tent with somebody else and your gear won't fit. I mean, again, folks, you can see here that there's so many different elements, so many different aspects that you need to consider when it comes time to buying a tent. And if you guys have more questions about these, just let me know. I can make a video that really focuses on the specific aspects if you want me to. We might as well move to interior space, and this is going to be a trade-off. Space versus weight. How much space do you need? How much weight do you want to carry? That's basically what it boils down to. Having a ton of space is awesome, but you have to remember you're going to be carrying that weight back home, or you're going to be carrying that weight to the top of the mountain. So consider those points. Also, when it comes to interior space, an important aspect to remember and to consider is tent height. Are you the type of person that likes to be able to bend, sit up inside of your tent and change clothes? Or do you want to be hunkered back trying to get your clothes on in the morning? You have to consider that yourself. It's going to be different for everybody depending on how tall you are. Personally, I could fit in most tents because I'm nice and short, and I could get comfortable just about anywhere. I even like bivvies. If you're very tall, some tents will simply not work for you. It will be uncomfortable to change your clothes in the morning or put on different clothes or do whatever you got to do. So consider that as well. For the sake of time, we're going to finish this video up, but we're going to focus on one more aspect, and that is the footprint. A footprint is basically a protective layer that separates your tent from the ground. Now, I'm the type of person, I like to really take care of my gear, so I like to put down a footprint. That way you don't have to worry about rocks or sticks puncturing the bottom of my tent. You may want to consider this as well. Not everybody carries a footprint. In most cases, the material of your tent is going to be strong. If you do a really good job and you clean up your site selection, you're going to be in good shape in most cases. But again, I don't like to take that risk. I like to protect my gear, so I take a very thin piece of plastic, lay it down on the ground, and then I put my tent on top of that, just to give it that extra protection. You have to decide what you want to do. Do you want to carry the extra weight for that footprint? Does your tent need that extra protection? Where are you camping at? What are the conditions? Are you going to be able to clear up everything on the ground so that you have a nice, safe place to put your tent? Only you know that. Only you can decide. So my friends, right there we have it. We've discussed many aspects that you should consider when it comes time to purchasing a tent. Now, like I said, there's not, in most cases, for most people, a one-tent-fits-all solution. If you're like myself, adventurous, you want to go here, you want to go there, you want to see new things, in most cases, that one-fits-all solution just isn't feasible. So, for me personally, I never criticize people when it comes to price, on how much they're willing to spend on gear. Some people are willing to go sky high, $1,000 for a tent, for a shelter, and I completely get it. I understand 100%. I would never lecture anybody on their passions, on their hobbies. If you're just getting started with backpacking, you're testing the water, you're not really sure if it's your thing or not, it makes sense not to spend a fortune. You do not have to go out and buy the most expensive gear out there. You will know pretty quickly if backpacking, if adventuring is something that you're going to like. For me, I love it. I love it. It's my life. I love being outside. I love being outdoors. I love experiencing new things. So spending a couple extra bucks on a really good piece of gear is worth it. It's worth it to me. And I know for many people, it's worth it to them. So there you go. Now, with going over these aspects, did I forget some? Probably. I mean, that's how it goes. Nobody's perfect. I did my best of just sitting down here, writing everything up, and just trying to think about, what are the different factors, the different aspects that should be considered. So hopefully I've touched upon most of them. If I forgot about one, remind me. I'll shoot another video. And also, like I said before, if there's certain aspects that you need more information about, let me know. I'll shoot a video. I have no problem with doing that. Love helping you guys out. So folks, cheers everybody. Strength and honor. Have a great time adventuring. I'll see you guys around. Be well.